The rain-slicked bridge railing bit into my palms like a promise I couldn't keep, the Colorado River roaring 100 feet below, mocking the fragile thread of my resolve. "Jump, Alex." The voice in my head whispered, Justin's last words echoing like thunder. "You're not worth the lie anymore." But as the storm clouds cracked open and lightning etched the sky, a truck's headlights pierced the downpour. Tires screeching to a halt, a door slamming, and then Scott's voice, raw and urgent. "Alex? Jesus, man. Get down from there." "What the hell are you doing?" I froze, the world tilting as Scott's strong hands gripped my shoulders, pulling me back from the edge like he was yanking me from a nightmare. My brother Ryan's best friend since high school, Scott had always been the steady one. The guy who fixed engines and cracked jokes over campfires, his laugh a low rumble that cut through tension like a knife through butter. But tonight, under the relentless patter of rain on his faded Broncos cap, his blue eyes held something new. Fear, sharp and unfiltered, mirroring the storm in my chest. "Talk to me, kid," he said, his voice barely above the river's rage, one arm still locked around my waist as if I might shatter. I wanted to shove him away, to spill the poison Justin had poured into me weeks ago. The betrayal that had stripped me bare, outing me to our small-town circle with a casual text chain, turning whispers into shouts. But the words stuck, heavy as the mud caking my boots. We stood there, soaked to the bone on that godforsaken overlook outside Denver, the city lights blurring into a hazy glow behind us. Scott didn't push. He just held on, his flannel shirt clinging to his broad frame, smelling of pine and motor oil. "Ryan's worried sick," he finally muttered, guiding me toward his truck with a gentleness that made my throat tighten. "Said you've been ghosting everyone since. You know." The since hung between us like smoke, Justin's shadow looming even here, in the wild sprawl of the Rockies. As we drove back through the storm, wipers slapping rhythmically, Scott glanced over, his jaw set. "Pack a bag tomorrow. We're getting out of here. Appalachians, 2 weeks. Just you, me, and the mountains. No phones, no bullshit. Deal?" I nodded, numb. Not because I believed in miracles, but because in that moment, with the rain washing the world clean, Scott's quiet certainty felt like the only anchor I had left. The drive to Asheville was a blur of interstates and greasy diner stops, Scott behind the wheel of his beat-up Ford F-150, humming old Springsteen tunes under his breath like they could stitch the frayed edges of my soul back together. Ryan had cornered me that morning in our cramped Boulder apartment, his face a mask of brotherly guilt. Tall and lanky like Dad used to be, but with Mom's soft brown eyes that always saw too much. "Scott's solid, Alex," he'd said, clapping a hand on my shoulder that lingered a beat too long, like he was afraid I'd vanish. "He knows about Justin. Told me everything after that party last month. Let him help." I hadn't argued. What was there to say? That the betrayal still burned, Justin's texts replaying in my mind like a bad loop. "Dude, if you're gonna play both sides, own it." Told the guys, thought they'd laugh it off. They hadn't. The laughs turned to side eyes, the invites dried up, and suddenly I was the punchline in a town where fitting in was survival. Scott kept the conversation light at first, stories of Ryan's epic fails on their high school football team, the time they hot-wired the principal's golf cart for a joyride that ended in stitches and community service. "Your brother's a legend," he chuckled, his calloused fingers drumming the wheel as we crossed into North Carolina, the landscape shifting from flat plains to rolling foothills carpeted in emerald. I managed a half-smile, the first real one in weeks, but it cracked when he asked about me. "Art school treating you okay?" His tone was casual, but his eyes flicked over, reading the slump in my shoulders. Pratt Institute back in Brooklyn felt like another life. Sketches of cityscapes and feverish nights questioning every line I drew, every shadow that looked too much like my own doubts. "It's fine," I lied, staring out at the haze of kudzu choking the trees. "Just figuring shit out." We hit the trailhead at dusk, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park swallowing us whole in a symphony of cicadas and rustling leaves. Scott hefted our packs like they were feathers, his no-nonsense North Face loaded with dehydrated meals and a first aid kit that could stock a hospital, mine a mismatched thrift store bag stuffed with sketch pads and the weight of unspoken grief. "First rule of the trail," he said, slinging his arm around my neck in that easy, brotherly way that blurred lines I'd spent years drawing. "Leave your baggage at the trailhead, metaphorically speaking." His grin was crooked, boyish under the scruff of his beard, and for a second, the knot in my chest loosened. We hiked the first mile in silence, the path winding up through rhododendron thickets, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and wild honeysuckle. By the time we pitched camp at a clearing overlooking a misty valley, the sun had dipped behind the ridges, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. That night, over a fire crackling with pine knots, Scott pulled out a battered acoustic guitar from his pack. "Ryan's old one," he explained, "the one we'd all jammed on during lazy Colorado summers." His fingers danced over the strings, coaxing out a melody that was half folk, half heartache. His voice gravelly and low. "Well, I woke up this morning, and the sun was on fire. I sat cross-legged on a log, chin on my knees, the flames flickering shadows across his face. Strong jaw, faint scar above his left eyebrow from a biking wipeout years back. He was 31 to my 24, worlds apart in that rugged assurance. But in the firelight, he looked vulnerable, like the kid who'd shown up at our house after his folks split, crashing on Ryan's couch for months. When the song faded, he passed me the guitar. "Your turn. Ryan swears you could give Dylan a run." I shook my head, but his expectant gaze pinned me. My fingers fumbled the chords at first, rusty from disuse. But then something gave way, a raw rendition of Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen's lament twisting with the wind through the trees. Scott listened without interrupting, his eyes steady on mine, and when I finished, hoarse and exposed, he nodded slowly. "That's pain turned to something beautiful, Alex. Hold on to that." The words landed soft, but they stirred something deep, a flicker of the confidence I'd buried under Justin's wreckage. We talked then, really talked, about Scott's divorce 2 years back, the wife who'd called him too soft for the world, about the quiet ache of rebuilding alone. "Mountains teach you," he said, poking the fire with a stick, sparks rising like prayers. "You climb because falling's not an option. But it's okay to slip sometimes." I wanted to believe him, but as embers died and we crawled into our tents, the zipper's rasp echoing my unease, Justin's ghost whispered back, "You're weak, Alex. Always were." The next day dawned crisp, mist clinging to the ferns like secrets. We broke camp early, tackling the Alum Cave Trail, a beast of switchbacks and sheer bluffs that tested lungs and legs. Scott led, his stride sure-footed, pausing to point out a black bear lumbering in the distance or the fragile bloom of a lady's slipper orchid. "See that?" he'd say, his voice a warm anchor amid the burn in my thighs. "Nature doesn't give a damn about your baggage. It just keeps growing." I lagged at first, sweat stinging my eyes, but his encouragement, never pitying, always matter-of-fact, pushed me. By midday, at the cave's mouth, a yawning arch of sandstone veined with iron oxide, we collapsed against the cool rock, sharing jerky and water from his canteen. His shoulder brushed mine, solid and unyielding, and I felt a pull subtle as gravity, toward the quiet strength he carried without fanfare. That's when the first real crack appeared, not in the trail but in me. My phone, stashed deep in my pack against Scott's no-tech rule, buzzed faintly as we rested. I ignored it at first, but curiosity won. Slipping away under pretense of scouting the view, I powered it on. A flood. Missed calls from Ryan, texts from mutuals tiptoeing around the elephant. Heard about Justin, man. You okay? And then, buried in the spam, a message from Justin himself. "Missed you at the bar last night. We need to talk." I fucked up. Rage boiled up, hot and familiar, my fingers trembling as I typed back. "Talk? You destroyed me." No response, but the damage was done. The mountains, for all their majesty, couldn't drown the echo. When I returned, face flushed, Scott arched a brow. "Ghosts?" he guessed, not prying further. But as we pressed on toward Mount LeConte, the weight settled heavier. and I wondered if this trip was salvation or just another ledge to teeter on. The ascent to LeConte Lodge felt like penance. Each step a negotiation with the ache in my calves and the sharper one in my heart. Scott moved like he was born to it, boots crunching gravel, pack swaying with the rhythm of his breath, while I trailed, sketching mental maps of the terrain to distract from the churn inside. The trail leveled at cliff top, a sheer drop-off where the world unspooled in layers of blue-rimmed ridges, and we dropped our packs to catch our breath. "Worth it, right?" Scott said, wiping sweat from his brow. His t-shirt clinging to the lean muscle of his torso, earned from years wrenching on cars at his garage back in Denver. I nodded, throat tight, the vastness below mirroring the void Justin had carved. "Yeah," I managed. "Makes the small stuff feel smaller." We lunched there. Peanut butter on tortillas, apples crisp from the chill, trading stories that edged closer to truth. Scott spoke of his dad, a steelworker in Pittsburgh who died too young, leaving lessons in silence and sweat. He'd say, "Son, life's a forge. Heat breaks you or makes you stronger." Took me years to get that. His voice softened, eyes distant, and I saw the boy he'd been, tough exterior hiding cracks I'd never noticed. Emboldened, I shared fragments of Pratt. The all-nighters in the studio, charcoal smudging my fingers as I drew figures that twisted with unspoken longing. The first tentative kiss with a classmate that ended in awkward laughs and, "Let's just be friends." Coming out was messy, I admitted, picking at a seam in my jeans. Felt like I was apologizing for existing. Scott's gaze held mine, steady as the rock beneath us. "Nah, you're not apologizing anymore. Not on my watch." That afternoon, as clouds rolled in like uninvited guests, we pushed to the lodge, a rustic haven perched at 6,000 feet, accessible only by foot, its shingles weathered by decades of wind and wonder. The staff greeted us with hot coffee and trail maps, but it was the communal dining hall that hit hardest. Hikers huddled over stew, faces sun-kissed and alive with the quiet thrill of arrival. Scott charmed the room effortlessly, trading tips on bear bags and boot insoles, while I hung back, sketching the scene in quick strokes. The steam rising from mugs, the flicker of lanterns against log walls. He caught me at it later, peering over my shoulder in our shared bunk room. A Spartan space with bunk beds and a wood stove crackling warmth. "Damn, Alex, that's got soul." His praise landed warm, but when our eyes met in the dim light, something shifted. A spark, unspoken, that made the air hum. Night fell heavy, the lodge's windows fogging with our breaths as stories flowed around the table. A retired teacher spun yarns of 70s Appalachia, fiddles and moonshine. A family from Atlanta marveled at their tween's grit on the trail. Scott fit seamless, his laugh drawing people in, but he kept an eye on me, refilling my mug, his knee brushing mine under the table. A casual anchor that steadied the drift. Later, alone on the porch, stars pricking the ink-black sky, I confessed the phone slip. Justin's reaching out. Like nothing happened. Scott leaned on the railing, exhaling slow. "And you? What do you want from it?" I didn't have an answer, but his presence coaxed one out. Forgiveness, maybe, or just closure. "He made me feel small," I said, voice cracking, like my truth was a joke. Scott turned, his silhouette framed by the rail, and placed a hand on my arm, firm, grounding. "You're not small, Alex. You're the guy who climbs mountains after bridges. That's big as hell." Sleep came fitful that night, the bunk creaking under me, Scott's even breathing a rhythm above. Dreams tangled, Justin's smirk morphing into canyon walls, Scott's hand extended over a chasm. Dawn broke with rain, turning the trail to mud, but we pressed on to Myrtle Point, the highest bald in the park, a grassy dome where winds howled like old ghosts. Scott hooped as we crested, arms wide, and pulled me into a bear hug that lifted me off my feet. Sweat slick, breathless, alive. "We did it!" he crowleyed, setting me down but not letting go right away, his grin infectious. In that embrace, the world narrowed to the press of his chest, the scent of earth in him, and for the first time since the bridge, hope flickered, not fragile but fierce. But the mountains have a way of mirroring your fractures, and mine deepened on the descent. Midway down, my boot caught a root, sending me sprawling into a briar patch, thorns raking my forearm bloody. Scott was there in seconds, kit out, cleaning the gashes with steady hands. "Easy," he murmured as I hissed, his touch gentle on my skin. "Breathe through it." The sting was nothing to the vulnerability, lying there exposed, but his eyes, blue as alpine lakes, held no judgment, only care. "You're tougher than you think," he said, bandaging the wounds. I wanted to argue, to spill how Justin's betrayal had convinced me otherwise, but instead, I traced the scar on his knuckle, a silent question. "Shop accident," he said softly. "Reminds me I'm still here." As we hiked on, the words lingered. A bridge between us, fragile but building. Back at base camp that evening, under a tarp strung against the drizzle, we cooked ramen over a whisper of flame. Scott's stories turned personal. Nights after the divorce, staring at ceilings in his empty apartment, wondering if love was just a bad bet. "Thought I was done with it," he admitted, stirring the pot. "Then Ryan drags me into your orbit and, hell, life's funny." His gaze lingered warm, and my pulse quickened, a new ache blooming. Not pain, but possibility. I shared more then. The sketchbooks filled with faces like his, strong lines and quiet depths, the fear of wanting what society still whispered against. "Gay in America," I said, the words heavy. "Feels like walking a tightrope sometimes." Scott nodded. "No platitudes, just truth. Tightropes break, but you've got friends who'll catch you." His hand found mine across the fire, brief, electric, and in that touch the first threads of something real wove tight. Yet doubt crept in with the dark. That night, alone in my tent, I drafted a reply to Justin. "We talk when I'm ready, not before." Deleting it felt like reclaiming ground, but sleep evaded, the rain a relentless drum. Morning brought clearer skies and a longer haul, the Foothills Parkway loop, 20 miles of undulating ridges. Scott sensed my unrest, challenging me to a race at the first overlook. We sprinted, laughing, collapsing in a heap of gasps and grins. "You're a force, Alex," he panted, propped on elbows, faces inches apart. The air charged, his breath mingling with mine, and for a heartbeat, I leaned in, lips parting, heart thundering. But a distant hiker's call shattered it. We pulled back, awkward chuckles masking the what-if. The day wore on, conversations deepening, dreams deferred. Like my gallery show stalled by self-doubt, Scott's urge to write songs gathering dust. By evening, at a secluded waterfall, we swam in the icy pool, clothes shed to trunks, the cascade roaring approval. Water sluiced over us, washing grime and guards, and when Scott surfaced, shaking droplets from his hair like a golden retriever, I saw him anew. Not just Ryan's friend, but a man whose quiet fire matched my own hidden embers. "To new starts," he toasted with a swig from the canteen, eyes locking on mine with intent that stole my breath. I echoed it, the words a vow, but as we dried by the fire, Justin's text pinged again. "Please, Alex." I was scared. The spark dimmed, betrayal's shadow long. The third leg veered into the heart of the park, toward Cades Cove, a valley ringed by ancient mountains, where history whispered through abandoned cabins and deer grazed like ghosts in the mist. Scott had mapped it meticulously, his love for the land evident in the way he named every ridge, every hollow like old friends. "This place holds stories," he said as we crested a rise, the cove unfolding below in a patchwork of meadows and creeks. "Folks came here chasing freedom, built lives from nothing, kinda like us." His words hung poetic, unintended, and I felt seen. Not as the broken kid from the bridge, but as someone with roots worth tending. We biked the loop first, renting rusty cruisers at the visitor center, the gravel crunching under tires as we weaved past wild turkeys and historic gristmills. Scott pedaled ahead, whooping on downhills, but slowed for me on climbs, his encouragement a steady cadence. "You've got this, lean in." Wind whipped my hair, the exertion burning away the fog, and for stretches, I forgot the phone buried in my pack, the world shrinking to the rhythm of spokes and his profile sharp against the sky. At the cable mill, we locked bikes and wandered the grounds, the wheelhouses grown a relic of labor long past. Imagine grinding corn here, day in, day out, Scott mused, dipping a hand in the stream-fed raceway. Strength in the mundane. I sketched him then, quick lines capturing the bend of his neck, the thoughtful crease between his brows. Art as confession, page as safe harbor. Lunch was picnic style on a quilt he'd packed, cheese, crackers, and tart wild berries foraged along the trail. We lay back, clouds scudding overhead, and talk turned to family. Ryan's overprotectiveness, a shield forged from losing Mom young. Scott's sister in Seattle, the one who'd pulled him through the divorce with care packages and curse-laden calls. Blood's thick, he said, but chosen family's thicker. The sentiment warmed, but twisted when I mentioned Dad's old letters, tucked in a box back home. Words of pride he'd never voiced, silenced by a heart attack before I could come out. He'd have loved this you, Scott said, voice low, his pinky brushing mine on the grass. The touch lingered, innocent yet charged, and I wondered at the line we towed. Friendship's safe shore or love's deeper current. Afternoon brought the real test. A side hike to Abrams Falls, a torrent plunging 30 feet into a turquoise pool. The trail was technical. Boulders and roots slick from recent rains, and halfway up, fatigue hit me like a wall. Can't, I gasped, hands on knees, the pack straps digging welts. Scott dropped his load, crouching to my level. Yes, you can. Remember the bridge? This is nothing. His faith stung, mirroring the inadequacy Justin had hammered home. You're too soft for real life. But Scott's hand on my back, warm through damp cotton, coaxed me upright. One step, then another. We summit together. The falls roar drowning doubts, mist veiling us in rainbows. At the base, we stripped to shorts and jumped, the shock of cold yanking a yelp from me. Scott surfaced laughing, splashing me until I retaliated. The play chase dissolving into shared shivers on the rocks. Drying off, vulnerability cracked open. Justin's text. He wants to fix it, I said, wringing water from my shirt. Scott's expression darkened. Not anger, but protective steel. Fix what he broke? Nah, you don't owe him your healing. His words validated the rage I'd swallowed, and I leaned into him then. Shoulder to shoulder, the contact platonic yet profound. Thanks for this, I murmured. For seeing me. He bumped my arm, grinned sly. Always have, kid. Ryan's little bros got layers. The nickname, once infantilizing, now felt affectionate. A bridge to the man I was becoming. Camp that night was a cove clearing, fireflies winking like conspirators. Scott strummed the guitar again. This time originals. Lyrics of lost trails and found paths. His voice weaving magic in the twilight. I joined on harmonica. A thrift find Ryan had gifted. Our duet raw and harmonious. Around the flames we delved deeper. Scott's bisexuality, confessed in college but buried under small-town expectations. My queerness, a quiet bloom in art school amid rainbow flags and reckonings. America's changing, he said. But slow in the hollows takes guts to claim your spot. His hand covered mine fully then, thumb tracing knuckles. A question, an answer. Heart hammering. I turned my palm up, lacing fingers. The fire popped approval. And in that clasp, affection deepened to something tender. Unspoken vows exchanged in silence. But dawn brought intrusion. My phone, checked against better judgment, lit with Ryan's voicemail. Hey Alex, Justin's been blowing up my line too. Says he's sorry, wants to drive out. Told him to back off, but thought you should know. Betrayal's echo, now familial. Ryan, mediator by nature, unwittingly stirring the pot. I deleted it, but the seed of doubt sprouted. Was I running or reclaiming? Scott noticed the shift over breakfast oatmeal, brow furrowed. Bad news. I shrugged it off, but the hike to Gregory Bald strained under it. Azaleas flaming pink against the slope, beauty mocking my turmoil. At the summit, A rare flame azalea bulb sweeping to infinity. Scott pulled me aside. Whatever it is, we're in this. His hug was fierce, body heat chasing chill, and I clung, inhaling him, soap and sweat and safety. Descent brought catharsis. A storm rolled sudden, sheets of rain forcing shelter under an overhang. Huddled close, soaked, we laughed at the absurdity. Then fell quiet, foreheads touching, breaths sinking. "Alex," he whispered, voice husky. It's real." Lips brushed tentative, soft as the rain. A kiss born of mountains and mending. It deepened slow, hands framing faces, the world fading to the taste of salt and promise. Pulled back by thunder, we grinned sheepish, but the seal was broken. Love, fragile and full, unfurling. Yet conflict brewed. That evening, at a trailhead motel for a resupply, our one luxury, Justin's call pierced the quiet. I answered, voice steel. "What?" His plea tumbled. "Regret, loneliness. I was wrong. Alex, scared of what you made me feel." The admission twisted. Not hate, but the mirror of my own fears. "Too late," I said, hanging up as Scott entered, takeout bags swinging. He read my face, set them down. "Him." I nodded, collapsing onto the bed. Scott sat beside, arm around shoulders. "You're not his redemption." We talked till midnight, unraveling threads. Justin's closeted confusion mirroring my past, Scott's steady presence the contrast. In his arms that night, platonic hold turning intimate, sleep came peaceful, but morning's light cast long shadows. Ryan's next text, Justin's coming to Asheville. Meet him? For closure. The choice loomed as we hit the road to Klingman's Dome, the park's pinnacle. Scott drove silent, respecting the storm in me. At the tower's spiral ramp, fog-shrouded views of layered peaks. I voiced it. He might show. Scott's grip tightened on the rail. "Your call. But no, I've got your back." The words fortified, and as we descended into denser woods, resolve hardened. Not confrontation, but boundaries. Klingman's Dome marked the pivot, the trail's crown where decisions crystallized like rime on the observation deck. The fog lifted patchy, revealing glimpses of the infinite. Peaks folding into haze like pages in an unfinished book, and I felt the story of us teetering. Scott stood sentinel, hands in pockets, his presence a bulwark against the wind-whipped doubts. "Whatever happens with Justin," he said, voice cutting the chill, "doesn't rewrite this." He gestured between us, simple, profound. I nodded, throat working, the kiss from last night a secret ember warming the cold. We plunged into the Forney Creek Trail after, a rugged descent to remote backcountry, waterfalls and wild swims our companions. The path was wilder here, overgrown, ankle-twisting, mirroring the tangle inside. Scott led with map and compass, his outdoorsman's ease a quiet lesson in trust. "Eyes on the next step," he'd remind when I faltered, metaphor unforced. Lunch at a cascade was bliss. Feet in the current, sandwiches devoured as trout darted silver. He shared a boyhood tale, fishing with his dad in Pennsylvania streams, lines cast for bass and bonding. "Lost him too soon," he said, skipping a stone across the pool, ripples spreading. "But those waters? They run deep." I countered with Mom's garden in Boulder, zinnias and her laugh, cut short by cancer. She'd say, "Grow through the cracks, baby." Our losses twined, strengthening the bond. Afternoons swim turned playful. Cannonballs and dives, Scott's splashes drenching me till I tackled him into the shallows. Water warfare dissolving into breathless truce. Floating side by side, currents tugging, he turned serious. "About last night." I meant it. His hand found mine underwater, anchoring. "If you're ready." I was terrified, exhilarated, squeezing back. "I am." The admission freed something, and on the bank, drying in sun-dappled shade, we kissed again, unhurried, exploratory. His lips were firm, tasting of river and resolve. Hands roamed chaste, mapping shoulders and waists, affirmation over conquest. Pulled apart by a raven's caw, We dressed laughing. The intimacy a new layer, solid as the creek bed. Camp at Hughes Ridge was solitude incarnate. Elevated shelf overlooking valleys, no other souls. Fire built, stew simmering, we circled to deeper confessions. Scott on his ex-wife. Loved her fire, but it burned us out. Taught me love's not possession. Me on Justin. Not just outing, but the prelude stolen moments in bar bathrooms. Whispers of maybe someday, shattered by his panic. He chose fear over us. Scott's jaw clenched. His loss. Your gold, Alex, raw, real. Guitar followed. Songs co-written on the fly. Verses of bridges crossed. Mountains climbed. Choruses of we're here. Harmonica wove in. Our music a tapestry. And as stars wheeled overhead, we lay close in his tent. Spooned for warmth. Hearts sinking to cricket chorus. Morning's hike to the Nantahala Gorge tested metal. Steep drops. Suspension bridges swaying over voids. Midway, my phone vibrated insistent. Ryan again. Justin's in Asheville. At the trailhead tomorrow. Please. Panic surged. Visions of confrontation clashing with this sanctuary. Scott halted at a viewpoint, reading me. Talk. I spilled, voice breaking. What if he guilts me back? Scott pulled me close, chin on my head. Then you walk away. Stronger. His belief bolstered, but unease lingered like gorge mist. The gorge deepened our rift with beauty's irony. Emerald waters far below, eagles wheeling. We rafted a mild section at midday, oars dipping in tandem, Scott's commands crisp amid splashes. Forward two. Dig in. Adrenaline bonded us, high fives electric. On shore, picnicking with PB and JS, he broached us. This kissing holding, it's more for me. If it's too soon. I silenced him with a peck. It's right. Relief lit his face, and we lingered, foreheads touching. Planning post-trip. Denver dinners, gallery visits, a life sketch together. But betrayal's specter stalked. That night, at a gorge-side lean-to, rain lashed fierce. Huddled under ponchos, I checked the phone one last. Justin's message? I'll wait at the park entrance. One chance. Rage mixed pity. He'd been my first real try at love, clumsy and closeted. Scott, sensing, shared his own ghost. A college fling ended in outing, small-town fallout. Broke me open, but led here. His vulnerability mirrored mine. And in the storm's howl, we clung. Kisses fervent, hands entwining, bodies aligning in comfort's curve. I choose you, I whispered. He held tighter. Mutual. Dawn cleared to bluebird skies. The trail to Deep Creek a gentle contrast. Waterfalls in cascade, tubers floating lazy. We joined briefly, inner tubes bumping, laughter echoing off bluffs. Playful, it lightened the load, but Asheville loomed. 2 days off. At Midnight Gap, a high pass with panoramic sweep, conflict crested. I voiced the pull. Maybe facing him closes the book. Scott nodded wary. If you go, I'm there. But don't let him erase your pages. His protectiveness warmed, but sowed unease. Ryan's loyalty torn, mine divided. Evening at a creekside site brought ritual. Fire, food, song. But interruption came. A ranger's radio crackle. Weather warning for fronts. We hunkered, talking futures. Scott's garage expansion. My art residency dreams. We'll make it work, he vowed, fingers laced. Sleep entwined, his heartbeat lullaby. But dreams tormented. Justin's face morphing to Ryan's, betrayal dual-edged. Next day's tramp to Oconaluftee tested frayed nerves. Boardwalks over bogs, elk grazing meadows. At the visitor center, resupply run, my phone exploded. Ryan's call. Answered. His voice rushed. Alex, Justin's here with me. Said he'd explain everything. Come down. Shock hollowed me. Brother and betrayer allied? Why? Ryan faltered. He seems genuine, and I thought it might help you move on. Fury ignited. Ryan, unwitting pawn or active hand. Hanging up, I stormed out, Scott waiting. They ambushed. His face thunder. We face it together. The confrontation brewed as we neared exit trails, hearts heavy. Love's bloom threatened wilt, trust's soil eroded. Yet in Scott's steady gaze, a root held, humanity's messy grace, forgiveness not surrender. The final push to the Oconaluftee entrance was a march to judgment, the trail's easy grade mocking the turmoil churning inside. Scott walked beside me, pack straps adjusted with deliberate calm, his silence a canvas for my unraveling thoughts. Ryan should have known better, I muttered, kicking a pebble that skittered into the underbrush. Dragging Justin into this like it's some family reunion. Scott's response was measured, his boot falls syncing with mine. Brothers meddle 'cause they care. Clumsy as hell but real. Doesn't make it right. His words parsed the pain, separating Ryan's intent from Justin's opportunism. But the sting lingered, a fresh betrayal layering old wounds. We hit the parking lot mid-afternoon, the visitor center's log facade bustling with tourists snapping elk pics, oblivious to the drama unfolding in my chest. There they were, Ryan leaning against his Subaru, arms crossed in that defensive slouch, and Justin beside him, hands shoved deep in hoodie pockets, his once familiar frame shrunken by anxiety. The sight hit like a gut punch. Justin's dark curls tousled, eyes shadowed, the same boy who'd sketched with me in coffee shops, our hands brushing over shared pads. "Alex," Ryan called, straightening, his smile tentative. "Glad you made it." I halted, Scott a solid wall at my shoulder, and forced steel into my voice. "This your idea of closure?" Justin's step forward was hesitant, palms up like parley. "Can we talk? Alone?" Scott tensed, but I waved him off. Trust in his proximity enough. We wandered to a nearby bench, river murmuring nearby, leaves rustling judgment. "I was an asshole," Justin started, voice raw. "Scared shitless. Of you, of me. That text. Panic. But losing you. It's killing me." His eyes, hazel and pleading, dredged memories. Late-night drives blasting indie mixes, tentative handholds in shadowed parks. "I outed you to feel less alone in it. Stupid. Selfish." Tears tracked his cheeks, and pity stirred, but anger held firmer. "You didn't just out me, you erased me, made my truth a weapon." He nodded, deflating. "I know, therapy's kicking my ass, but forgive me? Friends." The ask hung, a lifeline or noose. From the bench, I glanced back. Scott and Ryan in low conference, heads bent, Ryan's gestures animated. Betrayal's double edge, Justin's personal fracture, Ryan's familial breach. "Friends, maybe," I said finally, standing. "But trust? That's earned slow." He rose, hug offered and accepted brief, closure's awkward seal. Walking away, weight lifted partial, but the real storm brewed with Ryan. Scott met my eyes first, questioning. I nodded, and we approached. "What the hell, man?" I confronted my brother, voice pitched low. Ryan winced. "Thought it'd help. Get it out, move on." Justin showed up at the apartment. Wrecked. Begged. Scott interjected calm. "Not your call, Alex's path." Tension crackled, Ryan's face flushing. "I'm family. I know what's best." "No." I cut in, sharper than intended. "You assumed, like everyone does." The words landed heavy, Ryan reeling as if slapped. "Alex, Shit, I'm sorry." His apology cracked, genuine, and in that vulnerability, the brother I knew resurfaced. The one who'd bandaged scraped knees, shared secrets under starlit roofs. "I love you," he said, pulling me into a hug fierce. "Just want you whole." I hugged back, tears pricking. "I am. Thanks to Scott." Over his shoulder, Scott's smile was soft, proud, a beacon. We parted with promises. Ryan to back off, Justin to heal separate. Driving out with Scott, windows down, Appalachia's folds receding, relief washed in waves. "You handled that like a pro," he said, hand on my thigh, casual claiming. I covered it, interlacing. Felt like climbing without ropes. Laughter bubbled, tension uncoiling. That night, in a roadside inn off I-40, We celebrated quiet. Takeout burgers on the porch, stars reclaiming the sky. Talk meandered to futures, joint hikes in Colorado, my sketches of him framed in his garage office. Partners, he tested, grin sly. Yeah, I echoed, kissing him slow, the world writing. But climax crested unexpected, 2 days from home. A call from Scott's garage foreman. Fire? Suspicious? Tools ruined. Arson? Scott echoed, paling. Back in Asheville for the rental car we dug. Ex-wife's new boyfriend. Grudge-fueled? Scott's face hardened, vulnerability cracking. Thought I left that behind. Support surged in me. We'll rebuild. Together. At the police station, statements given. His hand in mine grounded us. You're my rock, he murmured. Reciprocal, the fire forged us tighter. Return to Denver blurred. Flights, Ryan's airport pickup. Awkward but healing bro hug. Home was the apartment. Scott crashing on the couch first night. Evolving to shared bed by week's end. Routine bloomed. Mornings with coffee and canvases. His kisses lingering. Evenings wrenching cars. Me sketching designs for his relaunch. Justin texted sparse. Proud of you, boundaries held. Ryan mended slow, dinners tentative, laughter returning. Yet conflict simmered in subtleties. Scott's hesitance at public holds, small-town echoes. My sketches turning inward, confidence wobbling. One night, post-gallery rejection, doubt resurfaced. Am I enough? Curled on the couch, his arms enveloped. More than, you're my mountain. Lovemaking followed gentle. Exploratory touches, whispers of affirmation, bodies aligning in trust's rhythm. Dawn found us entwined, world anew. Climax hit at Ryan's birthday bash. Backyard under strings of lights. Justin there, invited neutral. Tension hummed. Midway, words exchanged civil. But Ryan pulled me aside. Scott's good for you. But, be careful. World's still rough. Patronizing edge ignited. I know the rough. And I'm choosing this. Stormed out, Scott following. In the truck, tears hot. Family's supposed to lift, not caution. He drove to the overlook, the bridge site redeemed. They'll come around. We prove it living. Kiss under stars sealed it, commitment's vow. Betrayal's echoes faded, replaced by growth. My first solo exhibit, Scott's garage phoenix rise. Community nods turning to allies. Humanistic threads wove. Forgiveness not erasure. Love's labor communal. Months folded into the easy cadence of us. Denver's sprawl feeling smaller. More navigable with Scott's hand in mine at brewpubs or trailheads. The gallery opening was a milestone. My series, Fractured Ridges. Born of the Appalachians. Charcoals of mist-veiled peaks. Figures emergent from shadow. Vulnerability etched in every stroke. Scott stood front row, Broncos cap doffed. His pride a quiet force amid the wine-sipping crowd. Told you, he whispered post-toast, lips brushing my ear. Soul on canvas. Ryan came too solo. Justin's invite declined graceful. And clapped me fierce. Words mumbled. Killing it, bro sorry again. Healing's arc. Incremental. The garage rebuild tested grit. Insurance battles, late nights hammering beams, Scott's temper flaring at red tape. I'd bring takeout, sketchpad in lap, capturing his focus. The arch of his back under shop lights, grease-streaked arms a testament to resilience. This place is us now, he'd say, pulling me onto the workbench for stolen moments. Kisses tasting of solder and sweat. Intimacy deepened layered. Mornings tangled in sheets, lazy explorations of skin and size. Evenings on the porch, his head on my lap, fingers combing his hair as we dreamed aloud. A cabin in the Rockies, someday, walls lined with my art and his guitars. But America's undercurrents stirred conflict anew. A customer at the garage, burly vet with faded ink, clocked our linked hands over the counter. That your roommate? Tone-laced, and Scott's jaw ticked. Partner, he corrected even. The man grumbled off, but seed planted. Whispers at Ryan's next barbecue. Aunt's side-eye over potato salad. Proud of you boys? Uncle Ted boomed, clapping backs. but the room's chill lingered. Later, alone in the kitchen, Ryan cornered, "Ignore him." But Scott's solid, yeah? Not just a phase. The question, born of love's worry, cut deep, echoing Justin's sabotage, society's subtle siege. Phases pass, I snapped. This endures. He deflated, hugging tight. Then I'm in. Betrayal's final twist came subtle. Justin's exhibit invite, overlapping mine. A Brooklyn dual show. Curators linking our shared narrative. Temptation tugged, confront past triumphs. But Scott's counsel steadied. Your story now. Own it. I declined polite, focusing mine. Opening night swelled with allies. Pratt alums, Denver queers, Scott's crew toasting with IPAs. Sales trickled, then poured, confidence cresting like a summit sun. Climax unfolded unplanned. A winter storm trapping us in the cabin we'd rented for anniversary. Guanella Pass, snow blanketing pines, fire roaring hearthside. Old doubts surfaced in the isolation. My voice small. What if I'm the phase? After your ex. Scott knelt, eyes fierce. Alex, you're the summit. The view I climbed for. Tears fell, his thumbs wiping, and we made love profound. Slow dances of bodies and breaths. Affirmations whispered in the dark. Dawn broke crystalline, world renewed. Spring brought humanism's bloom. Ryan's coming out toast at a pride hike. His bisexuality shared tentative, our circle widening. Justin's card arrived, thrilled for you. Found my piece 2. Closure complete. Scott's proposal wasn't ring or knee, but a trail at dawn. Pack with my sketch of us. Guitar strummed soft. Build this life? With me. Yes, choked out, embrace eternal. Years later, the cabin hours, walls alive with art and song. I stand at the window, mountains eternal. Our love their echo. Confidence, once lost, reclaimed not alone, but entwined. In America's vast, flawed heart, we thrive, human, whole, unbowed. The end of the trail isn't finish, but horizon. Endless ridges, each step surer, hand in hand.